The All-Stars of the WNBA took to the court this week wearing shirts that read, "Pay us what you owe us," a powerful statement about the lack of revenue sharing perpetrated to them by the owners of the league. I managed to interview one of these gals who took time away from her second job working ladies big and tall to tell me the following, quote, "We simply want to be paid what we deserve. The fact that the NBA is hugely popular and pays their stars millions of dollars is unfair because they're men. The fact that no one watches our games doesn't mean that we too don't deserve all of that money. Or maybe it does. I've never been that good with numbers, but that's girl math." End quote. I was so moved by this interview that I decided to help these ladies out by diving into the negotiations myself. It turns out, unfortunately, since the league lost $50 million in 2024, each player owes their respective owners roughly $294,000. Now, will that be cash or check? I'm Tyler Chrestman. Welcome to the Chrestman Conversation. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I have two topics that I'm going to discuss this week. We're going to be talking about the WNBA and the future of state-owned grocery stores. Two very fun topics. I know that it's going to seem mean-spirited to make fun of the WNBA, but I can't help it. They invited it on themselves. I don't know what to tell you. It's going to be a good time. We're going to have a lot of fun doing it. And because we only have two topics, I'm going to dive right in. We get to do a little bit more in-depth on both of them because I didn't really find three things I wanted to talk about this week because another big story in the news was the Epstein stuff, and I told you last week I'm not talking about it for a little bit, okay? I'm giving it a break. 2 weeks in a row is too many. We don't have enough. We're not going to talk about Epstein. So, I mean, we just kind of did, but we're not going to, all right? We're not diving deep into it, so get off my back. Anyway, let's move on. Topic one, pay us what you owe us. Most people this week probably didn't see this because most people don't watch the WNBA. If you did see it, you probably saw it being reported by somebody else. You definitely didn't see it during the game because, again, you didn't watch the game. Let's be honest. The WNBA All-Stars, which itself is a bit of an oxymoron because there are no real stars in the WNBA, the All-Stars took to the court this week, and they were wearing this T-shirt that said, "Pay us what you owe us." It's a black shirt, big, bold, white letters, and everyone said, "Oh, my gosh, how stunning, how brave." And, okay, fine. I guess we can explain this shirt situation so that everyone can understand why this is a political issue and why this is kind of a big deal. In 2026, next year, the WNBA is going to begin an 11-year media deal that is worth $2.2 billion. So a not insignificant chunk of change that, again, over the course of 11 years is not as exciting, but it is kind of a big deal. It's a lot of money for this league, which is a big deal. The players' union opted out of their collective bargaining agreement last year and have been negotiating for about a year with the owners to get a fair share of or what they believe would be a more fair share of the revenue split. And basically, they have not made much progress. And they have to come to an agreement by November of this year. October 31st is the deadline. They have until November, and apparently they are still very far apart on the issue and of pay. They've kind of come to the table, and basically the owners have shut down everything that they've said. And it's a big deal because this revenue sharing seems like an unfair issue. When you look at it, it is true. It seems like it's unfair to the players of the WNBA when they hold up their charts and they talk about the different leagues and how much the different leagues make and blah, blah, blah. It's all this thing. And when you look at the WNBA compared to other leagues, and the easiest one, obviously, is the NBA because male basketball, female basketball, you can't get a better comparison, male to female, apples to oranges, whatever the case may be. But basically, the WNBA, they have a salary where it starts, the minimum is $66,000 a year, and I think the highest paid players make up to $250,000 a year. Now, the NBA, a little bit different. Their league minimum is $1.27 million for a season, and their star players make upwards of $50 million. Now, that's just salary from the team. Obviously, many stars make much more than that because of their endorsement deals, which are secondary to their salaries. The team salaries are not actually where the big stars make their money. They make them on endorsement deals. That's why someone like, I don't know what Caitlyn Clark is making in that range, but someone like her, she's a millionaire because she has endorsement deals. That's where they're making their money. So there are WNBA players who make a decent amount of money. I'm sure Angel Reese is getting paid. Asia Wilson, I think that exhausted the amount of basketball WNBA players I can name. But there are some people who make money. The problem is that 50% of the NBA's revenue, it goes directly towards paying these players' salaries. And that number is only 9% in the WNBA. And I actually have a helpful chart here, which we're going to show and then we're going to talk about. So this is why the WNBA players are upset. Take a look at this chart and realize, so this is reported, this was on NBC News. This is the league share, the WNBA players' league revenue compared to different leagues. So you're looking at the NHL, the NBA, the NFL, and the WNBA. Let me scroll here so you can see a little bit better. Okay. What you're looking at right now is why WNBA players say they're not paid their fair share. So you can see the NHL, NBA, NFL, all the big leagues in sports. That's not including the MLB. I don't know what their revenue share is. But these other leagues, you're looking at the players' share of the pie is 50% of the revenue generated by the team. So half of all the money that the league makes goes towards paying the player's salary. In the WNBA, 90% is going to the owners, with 9% going to the players' salaries. So people look at this chart and they are obviously saying, oh, well, the women, they're not making their fair share because the WNBA, 50% of the revenue of the league should go to pay their salaries. That would be fair. That would be parity because NBA 49%, WNBA 9.3%. That obviously is not fair. It seems that way. But see, this is how you can trick people with charts in data. And you can say something like this, and it makes sense to me. Here's the difference. You see in the NHL, NBA, NFL, you have this big 50% number on the top, this light blue, 51 for the NBA, 52 for the NFL. You see these light blue numbers at the top? You know what that money is? That money's profit. That's what that money is. And this dark blue down here, to pay the players' salaries, this is an expense. So if you own a team or you own a business, doesn't matter what the business is, you own a business, you have payroll. That's what salaries are, right? That's what these dark blue numbers are. This is payroll. Hey, how much money does it cost to make people work in my store? In this case, it's teams. It could be a store, could be whatever. That is part of your operating expenses. You say, hey, I got this much money that I can pay to you. There's what your salary is going to be, because I have to recoup costs for that, which means I have to make more money than this, and then I have to make profit, which helps me achieve my money, which helps me achieve profit I have to make more than your salary. We all know what I'm saying. So basically, this number up here, this light blue number, this is profit. This is what those guys are making. And they're making money despite having to pay for this dark blue 50%, 49, 48%. They're making money on top of that. Now, the difference is when you go over here to the WNBA, you see this light blue 90% owned by the owners. You know what this is not? It's not profit. They're not making money. And why is that? Well, because the WNBA loses money every single year of its existence. Now, the NBA founded the WNBA 30 years ago. So the league has been in existence for 30 years. Do you know how many years the WNBA has turned a profit? I believe that number is 0. 0 years where they made money. There are some teams who've managed to make a profit on their team, but the league as a whole doesn't make money. The league loses money. And in 30 years, it's a loss. Loss after loss after loss after loss. And the only reason that the league exists is because the NBA treats it like a charity case, and they give it money every single year to stop the league from folding. So the WNBA players who think they're worth a lot of money, you have to demonstrate. Where do you think that money comes from? Because right now, people like Steph Curry and LeBron James are paying your salaries out of their own pocket. Not because people want to watch you, but just because. Because they like having it around, because, again, it's like a charity case. It's like a tax write-off. They basically just treat it like that. For 30 years, they've done this. 7 of the 13 teams that compete in the WNBA are still owned by NBA ownership groups. They are not independent things owned by some guy who's out there to make money. They're owned by the NBA. because the NBA uses them or basically just subsidizes them with their excess profits because the NBA makes so much money that they can just give $10 million a year to the WNBA to fund the league. Because that's how much they have to give every year to make sure that the league doesn't just fold up and go away. In 2018, Adam Silver, who is the commissioner of the NBA, he said that the WNBA on a good year loses $10 million. Last year, for example, we say on a good year, they're down $10 million. Last year, they lost $40 million. Last year was the best year ever for the WNBA, and they lost $40 million. Now, why is that? Partly it's because they had better TV ratings, better game attendance that they've ever seen before because Caitlyn Clark is a star. She is people. The only reason people watch the WNBA is because of Caitlyn Clark. I don't care if you don't like that. It is absolutely true. There are some people out there who actually enjoy the WNBA, but you can count those people on two hands, okay? My friend Jade is one of those people. Hey, congratulations. I'm sure the WNBA is great to watch, and I get why you want to support it. However, most people don't watch the WNBA. The WNBA loses money every single year. They had the best year ever last year in terms of their ratings, in terms of their game attendance, in terms of their jersey sales, the best year ever. They lost $40 million. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Why do you think you deserve more money? Because no one watches the games. Okay, and this is actually, it's not really true. Because on ESPN, for example, I looked this up earlier, they said that there were some games that averaged over 1 million people. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people to watch an event. The problem is that the WNBA last year, part of their collective bargaining agreement, they actually negotiated different things. So, for example, they all stopped flying coach. This was a huge expense for the league because all of a sudden teams were no longer flying coach. They wanted to fly first class and they wanted charter jets because that's what they do for the NBA, and those guys don't fly coach and blah, 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 blah. Quadrupled their expenses, lost $40 million. And because they want to act like NBA stars, when there's 18 people in the arena, you got a 1-to-1 fan-to-player ratio for people watching games in person. It's the ticket sales, for example, for, I think it's the Chicago Sky. They did this where they said, hey, when Caitlyn Clark comes to town, tickets were $50, whatever it was. And then Caitlyn Clark, the next game when she wasn't in town, the tickets were $3. They were giving them away. They were more homeless people looking to get out of the heat than there were people who were there to watch basketball. I don't care about basketball in general. I don't care about the NBA. I don't care about the WNBA. I'm not a basketball fan. What I do care about and why this is an issue is because people want to pretend that this is sexism. It's not sexism. It's the same thing when we used to talk about, people would say, or people got mad at John McEnroe for saying that Serena Williams isn't the best tennis player of all time. Serena Williams is not the best tennis player of all time. There's nothing sexist about this. Men and women are different. Men like watching people do things on television that they can't do in real life. So when you watch somebody run and jump and leap through the air like Michael Jordan from the free throw line and pump his hand twice and dunk the basketball, you go, wow, that's incredible. I could never do that. I think a lot of men don't like watching the WNBA because it's a bunch of women. And a lot of men, people are going to be mad I'm going to say this, a lot of men could do what people in the WNBA do. If the worst team in college men's basketball played the best team in the WNBA, I would bet my life savings that they would win. Okay? The worst team of college basketball men could beat like the best team of the WNBA. Let's say Division I men, just to make it clear. Not like a junior college guys who, don't play basketball. I'm saying like a decent male basketball player could beat like the best woman player of all time. The same thing that happened when Serena Williams challenged the guy who was ranked like 120th in the world, who was on the borderline of retiring, smoking cigarettes in between sets. He crushed her 6-0, 6-1, 6-0. It's the same thing. It's not sexism. The fact that people don't watch the WNBA games is not the fault of the people. It's the fault of the WNBA because it's just not as good as the NBA. Okay? And it's not nobody's fault. It's like, again, the women's soccer thing. They were always talking about, women's soccer they're better than the men's team. Well, they're not. They're not better. They're better compared to the women. This is true. And that's a fine thing to say. The women's soccer team, for example, was the most dominant team to ever exist ever. The U.S. women's soccer team just crushes the world basically every 4 years. It's great. They don't make the money that the men's team does. They just don't. People don't care as much. And I can't make people care about women's sports. I actually like women's sports. The one thing that the UFC does well is that the women and the men, they basically fight at the same time. They're on the same card. So you want to watch the fights, you're going to watch the women's fights. And, some of them aren't as good as the male counterparts, and that's fine. And some of them kill. Zhang Weili is one of the best MMA fighters you're ever going to watch because she's fun and exciting. And I don't care that she weighs 115 pounds. She's just fun. So I'm not going to say I don't like women's sports. I liked watching Serena Williams play tennis because she was so dominant and it was amazing to me. But you're not going to get there. You're not going to make me feel like America has a problem because they don't like women's sports as much as the men. It's just not a thing. And it doesn't matter what you think. If you think that the women deserve money so that they can play their sport, well, that's what's been happening for 30 years. The NBA has been subsidizing the WNBA for 30 years so women can play basketball. I think that's a great thing. But you don't get to come up there and then say, hey, everyone in the world is actually sexist because they don't like the WNBA as much as the NBA. And it's actually your fault, America, for not wanting to watch Angel Reese grab her own rebound 15 times in a game. I don't understand it. The league has made a revenue. The revenue increase, I should say, from 102 million to 119 million over the course of 4 years. So this is from 2019 to 2023. So you say, all right, well, the league in total is making $119 million. You say, that's a decent amount of money. Again, that doesn't recoup the expense because apparently the league costs $135 million to just make happen between the salaries and the travel expenses, whatever it is. Everything that goes into the league costs $130 million a year just to put it on. And they only make $119 million in a high year. So it's kind of a ridiculous thing to think that, what I said in the intro, pay us what you owe, when you read it on that shirt, you actually owe the owners money. You understand? You're making charity money so you can go play a game that no one watches. What are you complaining about? I don't understand. Now, for example, if you guaranteed me, you said, hey, Tyler, we're going to pay you $100,000 a year, and all you have to do is go play basketball with the girls, I'd be like, all right, cool. That sounds like a fun job. I get to go make $100,000 to play a game. Are you telling me that if my family came into the game that we would probably quadruple the amount of tickets sold because I got a big family? Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I'll bring revenue to this league by bringing all my cousins. What are we talking about? I don't understand what the complaint is. The complaint is that Angel Reese doesn't get paid like LeBron James. Well, Angel Reese isn't LeBron James. Nobody cares about Angel Reese except to kind of make fun of her. And, she does it to herself again by saying people watch basketball because of her and Caitlyn Clark. No, you're delusional. People watch basketball because of Caitlyn Clark. The numbers prove this. The games, is it Indiana Fever? I want to say Indiana Fever is the game Caitlyn Clark plays for. Again, I don't know about the WNBA. I can name the two teams. Actually, I can name three teams now because I know Indiana Fever, the Chicago Sky, and the New York Liberty. I think those are three things. I think those are three teams in the WNBA. I'm pretty sure. And so anyway, Caitlyn Clark is the only reason people watch this league. She's the only person who makes money for a reason. And I don't know, again, I don't understand why this has to be an issue where people want to make this into some issue like it's American sexism or whatever the case may be. It's like the entire gender pay gap argument in general. I've always used this as a sort of a feeling out question to people when we talk about sexism or the patriarchy in the United States. And the question is always, what do you think of the gender pay gap? It's a great question to ask people to kind of gauge where it is and how much they know about a certain topic. Because if you believe that the gender pay gap exists in the United States, you really don't know what you're talking about. If you think, for example, that women are paid 70 cents on the dollar for men, you don't know what you're talking about. And that's kind of what I look at when I look at this WNBA thing. Once again, you're hearing something that sounds terrible. The women don't get profit sharing in the United States. There needs to be profits for there to be profit sharing. They don't get their same split of the revenue. Well, yes, because the owners don't recoup their expenses. It'd be like, I make a business, any business. Every year I operate at a loss. I'm on the verge of bankruptcy every single year. And then the union comes to me and they say, hey, man, we want more money. We demand our fair share. We demand this and that. First of all, you're not risking anything, so you don't deserve anything. I gave you a job. That's what you get. Secondly, I don't have anything to share because I'm losing money. What do you think? It's like you're trying to take a negative from me. If you really want to have your fair share, like I said, everyone should invest in this league. The league should be owner operated. It could be a real communist system. The ladies who play could be the people who own the teams. Hey, that'd be great. Except then they wouldn't like it because none of them would make any money. That $100,000 charity check they get every season would disappear because it turns out they'd have to pay their own money in, and it turns out the league would fold up in about 5 seconds. So anyway, we're going to move on from this. It's just, to me, it's silly because, again, people make this into an issue and act like America has a problem. It's not America. It's the fact that no one wants to watch your game. And you can't make people care. You just can't. You can't make people care about anything. That's just kind of the way it is. And I think that's important to remember. Anyway, we are going to move on. We got to talk about this topic number 2. It is very important. Basically, the second topic, before we get into it, the second topic has come up a bunch recently. And I wish we could do a deep dive into some of it because it's very fascinating to me. And that is the topic 2. Why do people think that state-run grocery stores are a good idea? Very popular recently. I haven't really heard this in the past. Let's say the past, is that this chair? Oh my gosh, I feel like it's squeaking like Winnie. I thought Winnie was yelling at me for a second. I haven't heard this in the last decade. The last 20 years, maybe. I don't know where this idea has come from and why it has gained so much popularity. But you're seeing it in New York with the new socialist frontrunner for mayor, Mondani. You're seeing it in Chicago with the out-and-out socialist, Brandon Johnson. And you see it here in Missouri, in the city of Kansas City. This idea that the state is going to run grocery stores, and this is going to be a good thing. Now, we're going to use Kansas City as an example because Brandon Johnson and Zoran Mondani have just talked about doing this. They haven't done it, but they actually did this in Kansas City. And the idea in Kansas City was that there was a food desert. This became a big talking point 5-6 years ago. This idea of a food desert. So what's a food desert? It's basically a stretch where there's not a grocery store that supplies fresh produce and good food. So what you'll say is that you'll go to the hood, and there won't be a grocery store because grocery stores don't want to build there, or maybe they've closed down there, or whatever the case may be. So people go and get their food from convenience stores, or they do their grocery shopping at places that's not, or they have to travel to grocery stores. So this idea of food deserts became popular because, one, it's obviously racism, as everyone will say. Oh my gosh, food deserts, they don't exist in black neighborhoods. Racism, terrible, terrible, terrible. But 2, because the idea is that, that's why the black community is not as healthy. Because, 1, racism, obviously, duh. And 2, they don't have access to fresh produce. They don't have access to healthy foods. They can't, there's no Whole Foods in the hood. You know, Whole Foods show up in the bourgeois gay neighborhoods that everyone loves. And they're not going to show up they're not going to go in North County here in St. Louis and start opening up a Whole Foods. No, the Whole Foods around here exists in the Central West End. You know what I'm saying? So this food desert thing has been a big talking point. So Kansas City decided to combat the idea of a food desert. They were going to open their own store. So Kansas City went and they spent $17 million to buy a shopping center and renovate it. And they renovated it into a nice grocery store. And then over the last few years, the store has received almost $29 million. And you say, damn, great for them. No, not from people shopping there, but from taxpayer money through bonds, loans, ordinances, subsidies. They have received $29 million to make this store run. And last year, the store lost $900,000. Now, this is obviously this is going to happen. What were you thinking? It doesn't matter because could you imagine, for example, let's say I want to open a grocery store. Okay. I live here in St. Louis. The big grocery store is probably Schnucks or Deerberg's. I don't know what it is by you. But here we got these nice grocery stores. I want to compete. I want to say, hey, I'm going to open my own grocery store. I have $29 million to do this, and I still fail. I have done something incredibly wrong. Do you think that it costs $29 million to open a grocery store? Not even $29 million, because we're not including the $17 million it took to buy and renovate the building. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about $46 million that it has cost to run a failing grocery store where the shelves are bare, the produce is rotted and no good. People can't shop there. The crime has spiraled in the area because it was in a bad area to begin with, and it loses $1 million a year. What is the deal? Why is this the case? Why can't the state do this? I'll tell you exactly why. There's a number of reasons. One, grocery stores. If you think, for example, that stores in Chicago, this was a big deal because I think it was a Whole Foods and a Walmart is one of the reasons Brandon Johnson talked about doing this. A Walmart shut down, a Whole Foods shut down, it created this food desert, blah, 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 blah. There's a reason why grocery stores or stores like Walmart or Target or Walgreens, like all these stores, why they close down in certain places, open up in other places. It's not because one day they're in there and Walmart says, you know what, we looked around and we said, there's a lot of black people here. We better close down. That's not it. I'll tell you why. People don't shop there. It's a big reason. People steal from there. That's a big reason. And the third reason is they get tax incentives to move to certain areas. So there are a number of reasons why stores close down in certain places and open up in other places. It was a big deal in San Francisco where I think it was all the Walgreens. All the Walgreens in San Francisco closed down because they couldn't stop the shoplifting. And they said, if you're not going to police, we don't know what to do. That is why stores do what they do. They're not looking to just open up in quote-unquote white neighborhoods. That's not why. Brandon Johnson insinuated that it was racism that caused stores to close. No. Do you know that grocery stores operate at a profit margin of 1 to 3%? Think about that for 1 second. For every $100 you spend in the grocery store, somewhere between 97 and 99 of those dollars goes to recouping expenses. Remember, we talked about this with the WNBA. That is all it is. Before you get to that profit, 99 of those $100 are going to cover the cost of whatever it is you're buying. So they operate on very, very slim margins. What does that mean? It means that, one, you have to be good with your inventory. You have to make sure you're buying things that people want to buy because you can't let things sit on the shelves and expire. That's a huge deal. It means that your produce has to be on point. You can't buy bad produce. You can't allow produce to expire. You have to sell things, which is why you see a lot of stores do a lot of sales when things start to get bad. That's why if you ever see seasoned meat in a grocery store, you should avoid it. That's bad meat. Don't buy that meat. That is, unless you're going to cook it in the next 10 minutes. You shouldn't buy anything where it's like, oh, we put steakhouse seasoning on these burgers. They're ready to go. No, that's bad meat. Don't buy it. But that's what they have to do. They have to move product because they lose money. If something goes bad on the shelves, they lose money. The other big thing is people stealing. It's a big deal in a grocery store because imagine this. Imagine that for every $100 that I recoup as a grocery store, 99 or 97 of those dollars are going to pay for the things that you were buying, to pay for the lights overhead, to pay for the employee salaries. It's costing me money to sell those things. So that $1 is all I get in profit. So I sell you a banana. The banana costs $100. You sell 99 of that dollar is going to my employees. It's going to the lights. It's going to inventory. And then that $1 is what I'm taking home. Okay? So now I've sold $1,000 worth of bananas. And I've recouped $10 in profit. I'm living large because I've sold my $1,000 worth of bananas and I have my $10. You come in and you steal a can of shaving cream that costs $8. That's a big deal for me because all of a sudden I have to sell $1,000 worth of stuff to recoup $8 worth of things that you just stole by coming into the store and picking up a can of shaving cream. That's a big deal. In grocery stores, when people start walking out with products, it's a huge deal. So grocery stores close down in bad areas if you don't police the crime or they hire their own private security. That's why There's a Schnucks right down the street from me. I live in the city. There's a Schnucks right down the street. You walk in, there are 2 armed security guards who stand at the front door of the Schnucks. There's only one way in and one way out, and they're by 2 armed security guards just for this problem, because it's cheaper to hire somebody to stand in the front door at a $40,000 a year salary and police your items than it is to watch items walk out the door. Think about that for a second, how much extra money that costs. That's why places shut down. So these city-run grocery stores, they come in there and they say, you know what we're going to do is we're going to be able to sell at wholesale prices because we're going to help. It's like a charity case. The city comes in, they say, hey, we're going to be able to sell things cheaper to people because we're not operating at those profit margins, those greedy grocery stores with their 1% to 3% profit margins. We're not going to do that. We're going to come in there and we're going to do all these things. And then you know what it turns out? You can't recoup your money because your money walks out the door. You can't buy fresh produce because people don't shop in the fresh produce section, because it turns out when the Whole Foods opened up, they discovered that people actually don't buy the fresh produce because people make different choices, because consumers are what drive markets. It's not that the city gets to come in and dictate what you eat. It's that you decide what you want to eat and then you go buy it from those places. So the city comes in, they say, hey, everyone can be healthy because we got our kale smoothies that we're going to sell in the store. And we're not even going to sell those at a profit. You can buy them wholesale cost, and then no one wants to buy it. Guess what? That kale is rotting on the shelf in these stores in Kansas City because Kansas City thinks that it's a good idea to operate at a loss if it's at the cost of $29 million, $1 million loss every single year. They think it's a better idea than allowing the grocery stores to open up where they can make profit and make money on their 1% to 3% margins. This is the problem in a nutshell for large-scale government interventionism. This is communism. This is what always happens. This is what happens with socialism. This is what happens with communism. This is what happened with top-down economics. Top-down economics meaning that there's some guy in an office who decides how much things should cost. That is a terrible system. It never works out. These grocery stores are destined to fail. And not only are they destined to fail, they're destined to fail in a spectacular fashion, just like in Kansas City. If you open them up in Chicago, if you open them up in New York, it doesn't matter. People do not, it does not work that way. And let me tell you how this is going to go no matter where you try it. It's going to end up exactly like this. And here's why. We'll use the banana. We've been using the banana as an example. A banana, how much does a banana cost? 70 cents a pound, something like that? They're relatively cheap, okay? Why is this? Because of our basic rules of supply and demand. We have a giant supply of bananas. We actually have a lot of bananas. The demand for bananas is pretty high as well. But because the supply is so great and you can get them almost everywhere, the price of the banana is very low. Now, what if I do this? What if I put something else in the store? I'm going to take some weird, strange, spiky, bald fruit, and I'm going to stick it next to the bananas. So people will buy the bananas at 70 cents. I put this spiky ball fruit out there, and then I say, I don't know, 70 cents. And then no one buys my spiky, weird ball fruit I'm making up. And I say, well, why is that? Just as much of this weird fruit as there is the bananas. Well, the price should be the same. We have the same supply. The demand is low. No one cares. You have to lower the price to make me buy that weird spiky fruit that I'm using, just making up as an example. Some guy in an office is not responsive to this because he decided, well, actually, because you see, I can buy the spiky ball price things from Guatemala for this price, and the wholesale cost is this, and so each one of them is worth this, and then if we just sell them in the stores for this, everyone will pay this because that's how we recoup the cost of what we paid for it. No, that's not how it works, because people won't buy your thing just because you set the price. The market sets the price with capitalism. The bananas are the price of the bananas because that's what people will pay for bananas. Because if I take my bananas and I make them $1 a pound, you're going to say, why the hell would I pay $1 a pound for bananas? That doesn't make any sense to me. I like bananas. I don't love bananas. I just kind of wanted some bananas. And that guy over there is charging 70 cents. Why would I do that? I'll go buy my bananas from elsewhere. Okay, well, then a billion times a day, somebody's going and buying bananas. And that price goes up and down and up and down and up and down. And this store figures they need to lower their price. And this store figured out they can raise their price. And da-da-da-da-da. And the market settles in different areas with a different price for bananas. And it's based on thousands of interactions, millions of interactions that over time give you data points because you have someone bought bananas here and here and here and here and here and here. And that's how much people will pay for bananas based on millions of points of data, as opposed to one guy who just sets the price of bananas. And it doesn't ever work. It never has worked. Show me an example of where it worked. Now, the argument would be, well, what if we wiped out all the grocery stores and you could only buy bananas from one grocery store that sets one price? Then you would have no options. I'm sorry. That's what's happening in that. It's happened at different places, and it doesn't work for the same reasons. One, you can't set the price. Two, in a system where the top-down government just sets the price for things, those systems also tend to come with other stipulations and regulations that mean that your money is not actually your money, because you're not actually in charge of your money or your market value or anything. So when you have bread lines, when you're having a place that just says, actually, everyone's just going to get the same amount of bread, the same amount of eggs, here's your ration, blah, 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 blah. It's not a better system because, one, it's not a free system, and obviously freedom is better than not freedom. The freedom is better than tyranny. Freedom is better than slavery. Freedom is the ultimate good for a society. It's not the ultimate good, but it is a marker for a virtuous society, is the ability to have free choice. Do you want someone dictating to you what it is you can and can't eat? Do you think that would be better? This guy who wants the Kansas City grocery store, this guy in the Kansas City grocery store, he thinks that he should tell you what to eat because he wants to make you healthy. Hey, that's a noble goal. He wants to make you healthy. And by doing that, he's saying, here's what you can have. Here's what we're going to stock in your grocery store to supply your food desert. The market doesn't say, hey, these people want this, but I said they want this, and that's why the grocery store is failing. It always fails. It's always failed throughout history. Look back. It doesn't work. State-run grocery stores are a mistake. This is just a great example. Bare shelves, rotting produce, crime in the area. You have interviews from people who say, I won't even go in the store because there's drug dealing happening out front, because there's two people having sex in the bread aisle. And it's just like, wow, that is crazy. Capitalism is a better system. It's more moral. It is a healthier system. It is responsive to supply and demand, which is how economics works. It doesn't work if economics falls apart when you try and restrict supply or when you try and set market values based on nothing, based on your idea of what things should cost. You say, I'm going to make X. X costs this amount. I can sell it for this amount. That's what people will buy. People don't buy it for that unless you tell them to, unless you force them to, which again is bad for a whole bunch of other reasons. Anyway, to me, it doesn't make any sense that people just don't look back and try and find examples of the things that they want happening in history. It's not as though we exist in just this little pocket that we say, hey, I have no idea. I have blinders on. I don't look backwards because what's the point of that? You can look back through history. This is how you learn from other people's mistakes. It's the difference between a smart person and a dumb person. A smart person learns from other people's mistakes. A dumb person occasionally learns from their mistakes. It's not that everyone shouldn't learn from your mistakes, but if you're really smart, you learn from other people's mistakes. You don't watch a man fall in a hole and then go, what a dummy, and then step in the hole and go, well, I've learned. No, look at the man in the hole first and then say, I shouldn't step in that hole. That would be dumb. That's what makes you smart. Zoran Mondani, Brandon Johnson, people like this, they don't learn from the past because they're not students of history. They do not care. In the case of Zoran Mondani, he's actually not a bright person. And it doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever why you would be in 2025 advocating for such a boneheaded policy. Anyway, that's all I want to say about these two topics. I guess in reality, I would love to hear from people who disagree. This is a big one. If you think that this is wrong, that my take on economics is boneheaded, I would love to hear why, because I don't understand the argument against it. I try to. I really do. I try to understand the Marxist view or the socialist view that these are good ideas. I really do. I try to understand the other side of it. I've read it. I have on my shelf back here behind me. Actually, where is it? Somewhere on there. I can't remember where I have it. Oh, actually, you know what? Never mind. Yeah, right there. Okay, so right behind me, directly over my shoulder, right here somewhere, you have a copy. I have read the Communist Manifesto. I've got Das Kapital somewhere there on the shelf, and I've read these things. I understand, to an extent, the argument that Marx was making. I don't understand how now today you think it's a good one. So leave questions, comments, concerns, agreements, disagreements in the comments below, and we'll address them next week. And until that time, hope you guys have a wonderful week. I will catch you next Friday.